United States of America is the most powerful nation in the world. Yet, the way in which we treat many of our citizens is a shameful display of our power.
For hundreds of years, African Americans and their allies stood up and fought back against racism, segregation, and bigotry.
We have been woke from the dream, the beautiful dream, of having our first black president, only to find ourselves entering into a new era of mass incarceration and police brutality that we call the new Jim Crow.
People like Michael Brown, Sandra Bland, and my father, Eric Garner, and the list goes on and on.
This campaign is listening to our brothers and sisters in the Latino community.
Todos sabemos que el sistema no está funcionando en este país. No está funcionando para ninguno de nosotros.
And the money that's made from the rigged economy is paying for the political campaigns. And they say they're gonna fix things. Wake up, America. How are they going to fix a broken system when they are profiting from a broken system?
What this campaign is about is telling Wall Street and the billionaire class they cannot, they will not have it all. We want a government that represents all of us, not wealthy campaign contributors.
Since the recession of 2008, we have seen the erosion of the black middle class get worse. We've not just lost our jobs, but we've lost the homes that we worked so hard to build. So whether it's the fight for $15 an hour or for affordable housing, the policies that the next president enacts will either set us on a course towards poverty or prosperity.
People should not have to work 2 or 3 jobs just to get by, and then after all of that, 58% of all new income goes to the top 1%. That's wrong.
We live in the greatest country in the world, and yet so many of our citizens can't get an education. And if they do, they end up paying their student loans for the rest of their lives. Education is a right, not a privilege.
Instead of schools, they build prisons for profits and fill them to the brim with more people than any other society in history. We must disrupt the school-to-prison pipeline, reform our criminal justice system. The time is now.
I'm from Scotland, right? It's not a particularly rich country. It's not nearly as wealthy as the United States of America, for example. Yet, everyone has access to free education and healthcare. Why do we have that in America?
We should not be punishing people for getting an education. And instead of giving tax breaks to billionaires or fighting wars we should not be fighting, we're going to be investing in housing and education and healthcare.
This election is not a popularity contest. It's not about who you like or who you want to go have a beer with. It's about our future. It's about our children.
What this campaign is about is creating a political revolution.
From Strong Island to Staten Island, Queens to the Boogie Down, BK, Manhattan. We need you, New Yorkers. Don't be just liking this online. You got to get in line. It's time to vote, show up, represent.
At this crucial moment in American history.
Oh, yes, it is the music from the Wild, Wild West, Seattle style. Our next guest not only is the guitarist on this great music clip, but he's also a great journalist, independent journalist, tweeting all the time at Jeff Santos Show and also at Mark Taylor-Canfield. He is Mark Taylor-Canfield live on Skype from the great city of Seattle. Good afternoon, Mr. Mark. How are you, sir?
Good, Jeff. Kind of cold here in Seattle. We've had a cold spell.
Is it?
Unseasonably warm over the last few days. So people have been kind of bundled up, but we have the big Fremont Solstice Parade and celebration coming up this weekend, so it better get sunny because we need to see that sun in order to celebrate solstice in Seattle. Although it wouldn't be the first time that it's rained on, the longest day of the year.
I was going to say, it is Seattle. But you guys have a great summer. I mean, usually June, July, August, it's summertime. It's as sunny as most cities in the country. It's come September when it gets to be the great time, right?
Not necessarily so. Actually, it's traditional to rain here on July 4th, so the fireworks get a little bit soaked. You can never tell. We get maybe a week or two of rain in the middle of the summer for no reason. The temperature drops and everybody gets a cold, and then they all go home and, sit in front of the fireplace and read books until the sun comes out again. So I'm just telling you the truth, Jeff. Jeff, I would love to say that Seattle has LA
Well, you
weather,
just don't want those Californians migrating to your fair city. That's what it's all about. I know what you're trying to do, Mr. Canfield. That's okay. I don't blame you. Well, we got lots to talk about. And speaking of California, California primary, a lot of people now, a lawsuit not only about California by Sanders supporters against the Democrats and Secretary Clinton's campaign. But I want you to listen to a little bit of sound that I discovered from a tweeter the other day regarding what has happened in California. If you can play us some of this, Shane, I'd appreciate it very much. Our great producer, Shane, there in southern Florida. Go ahead, Shane.
Dear citizens of America, as most of you already know, Hillary Clinton defeated Bernie Sanders in the California Democratic primary by 12.6 points on June 7, 2016. 55.8% for Hillary Clinton and 43.2% for Bernie Sanders. But recently leaked information shows mass election fraud across the state. The sheer mass of the election fraud that took place in California was staggering and is unlike anything we have seen in decades. It is estimated that 2 out of every 3 Bernie Sanders votes were not counted during the California primary election. We will explain in detail exactly how the election was rigged and provide our sources. Let's begin. The true results of the election is estimated to be 69% to 31% in favor of Sanders. This is a landslide 38-point victory for Bernie Sanders. So how did Hillary Clinton manage to siphon 50 points from Sanders? Using 3 simple election fraud methods simultaneously.
All right, that's the beginning. We'll play more cuts for our good friend Mark Taylor-Canfield. But, outside of the eerie music and so forth, and the British accent, there seems to be some smoke here. He later points out, and we'll play some sound from the Orange County volunteer who was there dealing with provisional ballots and was told by her bosses that anybody who was a no preference party individual who Californians by law would let take an independent ballot, she was told only give them provisional ballots. So that and some other problems with the voting machines is how they come up with this this idea. Not sure how much you have heard about this, Mark, but this to me would make some sense because the polls, at least 3 or 4 of them going into the California primary, had Clinton up by 2 or Sanders up by 1, including the Los Angeles Times, which is a pretty decent poll. It makes very little sense that he would lose by 13 points. Your view on this? I know you're probably just coming into communication with this, but your initial thoughts.
Well, my initial thought is that on the night of the election, I was really surprised by the numbers. It didn't seem to jive with the polling numbers before the election, and I had heard some rumors about the provisional balloting in California before the election. And then just another quick reaction is that isn't it interesting that we don't seem to have any of these issues with voter suppression in states like Alaska, Hawaii, Washington, where Bernie Sanders won by such a large percentage. It's as if we only see these problems in states where the polls were showing them close. And so that's kind of a red light for me in terms of what's going on during this election. We also have complaints about Baltimore, New York, Arizona. You know, you've talked about what happened in your old hometown there in the Northeast with Bill Clinton visiting town and
New Bedford, right?
Tying up traffic. Yeah, and that wasn't the first place that happened. So, you know, there is a suspicion and a sense amongst a lot of the Bernie Sanders supporters in Seattle and in Washington State that this system, you know, is not necessarily accurate in terms of the vote counts, and that there has been a bias both in the media and on the part of the election boards across the country against Bernie Sanders in a lot of these races. So there are a lot of complaints, and unfortunately, we keep hearing the same thing that we heard, you know, after George Bush was selected, which is, oh, just move on. You know, it gets swept under the rug. In New York State that happened, you know, I mean, there's still a lot of votes that are unaccounted for in terms of, you know, why they were dropped for the voting rolls there. And you can't really say that the polling numbers and the election results have matched in a lot of these races. So it does bring up a lot of suspicion in my mind, Jeff. It just means I, as a journalist, have to do a lot more research and talk to some people in California and find out what the heck was going on down there.
Yeah, you know, that's exactly the case. All right, I want to hear from the woman who made the case on this video, which, again, we have placed on our website, jeffsantosshow.com. Let's play that cut from the volunteer polling person at the polling place, Shane.
Method 1. Bernie Sanders is heavily favored among NPP voters. In fact, this demographic is the main factor in Bernie Sanders' 38-point landslide victory. The Democratic Party ordered all NPP voters to use provisional ballots during the California election. And these ballots were thrown out and not counted toward the election. A newly trained California poll worker speaks out about her experience at her training session in the following footage.
Today I had my poll worker training class to be a poll worker here in Orange County, California. It was a 3-hour class, mostly good until we got to the issue of NPP voters, which in California is no party preference voters. When we were going over NPP, I was told that all NPP voters are to be given provisional ballots. I specifically asked, I had my handbook open. Let me show you in my handbook. Okay, so right here, the ones in bold are the parties that are accepting no party preference voters to vote for them. However, I was told that these people were to be given provisional ballots, always. NPP voters are always to be given provisional ballots. That's what I was told. I even wrote it right there in my notes at the bottom when I asked him the question. Well, I posted on some of the Bernie groups today because I was bothered by that, because I've always been told that these NPP voters here in California can vote for Democrats and that their vote would be counted. So I was a little worried that he was telling all 18 of us poll workers to give all NPP voters provisional ballots, because we all know what happens most of the time with the provisional ballots. They are not being counted.
It turns out she and all other poll worker trainees were being lied to. According to the county register's office, NPP voters must fill out a Democratic crossover ballot in order for the votes to count, not a provisional ballot. In other words, the trainees were told to give the incorrect ballots to NPP voters, and these ballots were...
Let's hold it there. Here's another one, talking to Mark Taylor-Canfield here on the Jeff Santos Show. We're talking with our contributor and pollster, Brad Bannon. And, he thinks, and he polls all these issues, that it's a good one for the Democrats to talk about, voting reform. I have a couple of things here. First of all, and I know it has to change constitutionally, but we need to have, like every other European country, every first world country, a centralized system. None of this crazy stuff. And it's going to happen. And I'm hopefully the Democrats will learn their lesson here, because if it happens again, everything happens in three, they say. It happened in Florida in 2004. It happened in Florida in 2000, in Ohio in 2004, and it could happen again. Let's just say that Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are locked in a tie. You could very easily determine that the state of Ohio, Republican-controlled Secretary of State, both houses, and the governor. Same thing in Florida, same thing in Wisconsin. Those are the three states that could flip. We've already seen them do it in two of the three states. Wisconsin is another disaster waiting to happen with Walker. So if we have secretaries of state that are on the side of a particular candidate, Democrat or Republican, well, you know what's going to happen. Close vote, all of a sudden, boom, flip the votes, because you can do it. I mean, there needs to be massive change here, and I think they gotta do away with the secretaries of state being involved. End of story. Your view?
Well, and of course, in Washington, our issue is with the superdelegates not representing the caucus results in Washington State. So there's the split in the party in Washington State. But in terms of the swing states, I mean, I've been saying for years that it's part of a negative result of the two-party system when you have the country split down the middle, and then this idea that we're split down the middle is promulgated by the media itself and by the parties, so that it puts people in a position of being held hostage as voters. Then who is important? It's the swing voter, right? The Reagan Democrat, the person sitting on the fence who's not a member of the party. The two parties feel that their membership are hostages to their party. Most Democrats assume that no one is going to vote for Bernie Sanders, nobody is going to vote for Donald Trump, who's a member of the Democratic Party. They may, however, be surprised by some people jumping ship there, amazingly enough, which is shocking to me. But this two-party system where the country is split down the middle makes it easy to manipulate small districts in lesser populated states, which are swing states, which could win the election. I mean, if it's close, and right now, actually, the polls are not, there's not much separation between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump in the national polls. So, yeah, it gives the opportunity for folks to manipulate things in those swing states, get just a few voters here and there to come their way, and then you've got the election, So your candidate doesn't get the majority necessarily, but it's a winner-take-all system, so it doesn't matter, right, if 50% of the people in that state actually support another candidate. All you want is that one extra vote to put you over the top, get that electoral college vote, which is another thing which, I've been saying for years should be just demolished. I mean, the electoral college is ridiculous, but here we go. This is supposed to be
another part of it.
A democratic republic. We have these issues with the parties manipulating the elections in swing states, and I don't know how you're going to get away from that as long as you have a 50-50 split and red versus blue in this country. It's a situation that actually works well for some people in power because it's easier to manipulate the system to their side. Unfortunately, I hate to report that, but it seems to be the truth.
Well, no, I mean, it's quite evident. I mean, the Democratic Party playing games in this primary is an example. I was telling our good friend Earl Bender the other day that we're no longer the Democrats on moral high ground if we're playing these games against Senator Sanders in California, in Nevada, in Iowa, and on and on and on, where they're flipping coins to decide votes. something has to happen. Now, I go back to our friends in California again, and of course, they dropped the ball here. Now, how much of it was outside influence, I don't know. But the fact is that California has led the way on a number of issues. And they have done one thing, and it was under Governor Schwarzenegger, actually, who did this. And we're now seeing where just recently Sanchez and Harris were running against each other in the primary and could be doing it the same thing in the general election. And you had this with a couple of congressional races where you had two Democrats running against each other. Maybe there's somewhere you can start it in the state where you eliminate, certain pieces, and maybe doing it in one state, where the Secretary of State can't get involved as they do here to sway votes. Or maybe you do the mail ballot in California, and maybe that starts the revolution. It's one thing to do it in Oregon and Washington State, but you do it in the largest state in the country. Maybe that's the way to then do a ballot. And here's another one for you. Why is it that we have the elections in November, where it's raining a lot in Washington State, where it's snowing in parts of the Midwest and maybe even in the Northeast? It's cold nonetheless in a good part of the contiguous 48. And I would say have it in June, have it a whole week long, mark it around Flag Day if you want to do it. A lot of European countries hold their elections in June and July. I mean, there are a lot of things you can do here. Somebody, I think it was President Carter, wanted to do them on Veterans Day, but that's also in November, so I don't think that really makes a difference. But make these announcements. I think if Sanders was president, he would be initiating all of these, for further reform. But maybe what you have to do is to start it at the state level, or start it at a point of a proposition ballot. Maybe you got to put it on in all 50 states or something. I don't know, but there needs to be an effort here, Mark, because of what we have seen, and not only in California, but around the country.
Yes, I agree. It's really shocking to witness a European election, say in the UK, where, the election lasts for, maybe a month or so. There's a strict limit on the amount of money that can be spent by each candidate. They're publicly funded. Okay, and there's also, because of their parliamentary system, instant voter runoff and proportional representation, and it's a national holiday on Election Day, so no one really has to go to work or school that day. It gives you the entire day to vote. As you said, the mail-in voting is actually better in some ways. Of course, you cannot trust the mail 100% either, but it does give voters a chance to read through the ballot measures, really do their research before they make their decision. And also, by the way, a shout out to Brad Bannon. I've known him for several years and was a guest on his program a couple times in the past. So good to hear his voice on your program. And I would agree that the reform system, the reform process needs to happen, and it needs to happen soon, because people are starting to lose their confidence in the electoral system in the United States. We saw, 1,000 people arrested in Washington, D.C. in April, protesting about voter suppression and, violations of voting rights. So Citizens United, and then, the big money entering into the campaigns has really challenged people's confidence too. Although we have to say that Bernie Sanders has proven that even in a post-Citizens United country, a candidate can, through individual contributions, challenge the corporate power structure within the parties and nationally. It's pretty amazing, actually, and that should be the real story that people are talking about, is how Bernie Sanders has raised so much money and spread his platform so far across this country in such a short period of time.
Indeed. Yeah, and just note from our great listener and friend of the program, Robin, 4 counties have flipped to Bernie in the recent reballoting or recounting in California. 4 counties. So, this goes to show you that this has to be done, and what is happening in California will continue to play that audio as well. Mark Taylor-Canfield, thank you, sir. We'll talk to you next Tuesday. All the best.
Thanks, Jeff. Yes, have a great week. We'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you soon. Right back after this time out. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Go to JeffSantosShow.com. I gotta go.